All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're breaking down a highly provocative and heavily discussed article by Lawson Agigde titled Daytime TV Politics and the Social Care Abyss. It's an absolutely fascinating piece that tries to decode the structural math behind the UK's social care crisis. Now, whether you end up agreeing with his conclusions or not, the way he frames this collision of demographics, politics, and technology is just incredibly compelling. We're going to walk through his argument step by step to see exactly how he diagnoses this mess, and ultimately, how he proposes we actually fix it.
We'll map out the author's argument in 5 quick stages: the longevity paradox, the demographic math, the ideological gridlock, the media distraction, and finally, the AI care levy. Let's get into it. Starting right off with Section 1, the longevity paradox, a genuine medical triumph. Agigde actually kicks things off with this incredibly dark joke that our social care crisis is literally the direct punishment for our greatest medical triumph. It's wild, right? But think about it. As a society, we completely upgraded human longevity. We cured diseases, we bumped up public health, we kept people alive longer, but we totally forgot to upgrade the economic engine required to actually pay for those extra decades of life. It's a brilliant way to reframe things. This isn't a failure of healthcare. It's our failure to adapt to healthcare actually working.
Which brings us to Section 2, the demographic math, or the basic arithmetic of late-stage capitalism. Look at the post-World War II reality for a second. Life expectancy was hovering right around 65. This societal deal back then was brutal, but mathematically, it was super simple. You worked your whole life, you retired, and statistically speaking, you passed away before needing decades of complex, specialized nursing. But jump to our modern reality, and it is a completely different ballgame. Medical science has pushed life expectancy way into the 80s and 90s. That 1940s societal contract, it just doesn't map onto today's elongated lifespans, which often require years of expensive, round-the-clock support.
And right at the exact same time that medical science was extending our lives, the article points out 3 massive socio-economic shifts that basically pulled the rug out from under the traditional family care model. First up, dual income survival. A single salary rarely sustains a modern family anymore, so both partners are in the workforce. If you're balancing a full-time job and a family right now, you know exactly how exhausting this is. And that leads directly to shift number 2, the vanishing caregiver. Historically, we relied on an unpaid army of carers, mostly women working in the home, to handle elder care. Now, they've been absorbed into corporate 9-to-5s. Throw in the third shift, demographic collapse. Exhausted couples are looking at the sheer cost of modern living and deciding to just skip having kids entirely, which shrinks the future tax base.
So here is the basic brutal math. You absolutely cannot support an expanding demographic of pensioners on a shrinking base of exhausted, childless workers. You just can't. And Agigde throws a pretty sharp political critique in here. You definitely cannot fund this demographic reality if you're simultaneously promising billionaires that their taxes will never ever go up. The math, he argues, is just fundamentally broken.
All right, moving on to Section 3, the ideological gridlock, delusion versus cowardice.
This is where the author really goes after the political class, claiming they treat this existential crisis like some performative episode of daytime TV. Just drama, no substance. Looking at this impartially, he essentially roasts both sides of the aisle. On the right, he calls their approach delusion, starving the state of revenue, relying on trickle-down economics, and basically crossing their fingers that tech companies invent automated nurse bots before the whole system collapses. But the left gets it too. He labels their approach cowardice, offering tiny micro-tweaks, relying heavily on migrant labor to keep care home wages artificially low, and being completely paralyzed by the fear of implementing genuine wealth taxes. He concludes it's an ideological dead end with no real structural solution in sight.
So why isn't anyone fixing it? That brings us to Section 4, the media distraction. A literal magic show.
You might be wondering, if this gridlock is so mathematically obvious, why aren't voters storming the gates and demanding a real fix? Well, the article argues that media empires, owned by the exact oligarchs who would lose out from wealth redistribution, deploy a masterclass in misdirection. Instead of explaining the grim macroeconomic reality, they give the public these shiny bogeymen to chase, blame immigrants for taking up hospital beds, panic over cultural issues and corrupting values, rattle the war sabers at foreign powers. It's an intentional magic show to keep you distracted while local councils literally go bankrupt trying to pay for adult social care.
Which finally leads us to Section 5, the AI care levy, the blueprint for a solution.
Okay, so here is where he stops diagnosing the problem and actually pitches a concrete solution, trying to capitalize on the massive tech boom we're seeing right now. But first, he points out some glaring economic insanity in our current setup. Right now, if a megacorporation replaces 500 human office workers with an AI model, our tax system actually rewards them with write-offs and lower payroll liabilities. Think about that. We are actively encouraging corporations to hollow out the traditional income tax base, which just happens to be the exact same tax base that funds local social care. Make it make sense, right?
To fix this massive structural flaw, Akigbe proposes the AI and Automation Care Levy. The idea is straightforward but incredibly radical. It's a proposed policy where businesses would be required to pay a dedicated automation contribution, pegged to a fraction of the payroll taxes they used to generate, whenever an algorithm displaces human labor. The core philosophy here is that society has to capture some of that AI dividend for the public good, rather than letting all that staggering wealth just funnel straight into the balance sheets of Silicon Valley.
So in practice, it's a three-step flow. Step 1, a corporation swaps out human labor for an AI system, scoring massive productivity gains and cost savings. Step 2, that business pays the dedicated automation contribution on those displaced jobs. And Step 3, this is the real game changer. Those funds are strictly ring-fenced for national social care. The author beautifully frames this as capturing technological productivity to fund the human empathy that AI just cannot replicate. Because honestly, an algorithm might crush a massive spreadsheet in seconds, but it is never going to hold an elderly person's hand, bathe them with dignity, or keep them safe in the middle of the night.
We're going to wrap this explainer up with the author's final, lingering question, and it's a powerful one. How should society value human beings when they are no longer economically productive? Beyond all the broken math and insolvent council budgets, this really is a deep question of morality and societal design, isn't it? How do we make sure that the evening of a person's life is actually a time of dignity and peace, rather than just a terrifying game of financial survival? It is a heavy question to chew on, and it perfectly encapsulates why this topic goes way, way deeper than just daytime TV politics. Thanks for hanging out with me to unpack this one. Keep asking those hard questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.